My sister told everyone I was dangerous because I refused to pay off her debt again. She said I was mentally unstable and tried to get me institutionalized. Yesterday, I showed the family the proof. This morning, she was evicted. I honestly never thought it would come to this. It was a Tuesday evening when my phone buzzed. Another text from my sister, Emily. Hey, can we talk? It's urgent. I felt that familiar pit in my stomach, a reflex built from years of midnight emergencies and desperate pleas. I sighed, bracing myself as I replied, Sure, call me. She called immediately. Her voice was shaky, edged with panic. I'm in trouble, big trouble. I owe money $3000. It's overdue, and they're threatening to sue me. I closed my eyes, rubbing my temple. Emily had a habit of dramatizing situations, but this sounded serious. Still, this wasn't the first time I'd heard these exact words. Emily, we've been through this, I said calmly. I can't keep bailing you out. You need to start managing your life better. This isn't sustainable. Please, I swear it's the last time, she begged. You know I'll pay you back. I always do. She never did. Emily, you've said that every single time, I countered, feeling exhaustion seep into my bones. And not once have you actually repaid me. I've kept track. It's thousands of dollars now. No, I finally said firmly, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. You have to fix this yourself. It stops here. There was silence. A thick, uncomfortable pause that felt endless. Then her tone shifted. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but I caught it immediately. Fine, she hissed. If you don't help me, you'll regret it. Before I could respond, she hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling uneasy but also strangely relieved. For once, I'd stood up for myself. I'd finally said no, after years of giving in, after years of enabling her irresponsibility. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe she'd finally learn. That relief lasted exactly 3 days. Friday morning, I got a call from my mom. Her voice trembled, and immediately my stomach churned with anxiety. Honey, we need to talk. I could already sense something was terribly wrong. What's going on? Is everything okay? Emily told us what happened. About how you threatened her, she said softly, cautiously. I nearly dropped the phone, shock washing over me. Threatened her? Mom, what are you talking about? I never threatened Emily. She hesitated, the silence heavy, accusing, like she didn't want to say the words. She said you scared her, that you've been acting strange lately. She thinks you're unstable. Unstable? My voice cracked in disbelief. Mom, that's ridiculous. All I did was refuse to pay her debts again. She's lying to you. Honey, she said, almost whispering now, sounding tired and defeated. She showed us messages. It doesn't look good. Messages? Mom, she's lying. Whatever she showed you, it isn't real or it's taken out of context. You know me. We just want you to get help, she said gently. Your father found some places. Just to talk to someone professional to sort things out. I felt a wave of nausea rise within me. You believe her? You actually think I'd hurt her? After everything I've done to support her all these years. She sighed deeply, the sound heavy and burdened. We don't know what to think anymore. We're worried, that's all. After we hung up, my world felt unreal, distorted, as though everything had tilted on its axis. My own family believed I was dangerous. Emily had twisted everything so convincingly that even my parents, who raised me, who knew my heart, doubted my sanity. I spent the weekend in a fog, second-guessing myself, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Emily. Had I done something wrong? Was I somehow misremembering everything? Was there truth in her accusations, hidden beneath the surface? Then the messages started pouring in. Relatives texting cautiously, asking if I was okay. My aunt casually suggesting therapy, phrased so delicately it hurt. My cousin texting, stay strong, as though I'd already spiraled out of control. Each message felt like a tiny betrayal, a small cut that left me bleeding emotionally. I tried reaching out to Emily, desperate to understand why she'd do this. I sent a simple message, "Why are you doing this?" Her response was chillingly brief. "You should have helped me when you had the chance." That was the moment I fully understood the depth of what she'd done. Emily had created a story, a narrative so compelling it had replaced reality. She wasn't just punishing me. She was rewriting who I was to our family. Her desperation had turned to vengeance, a cold and calculated effort to destroy me. On Monday, my father appeared unannounced at my apartment. I opened the door, surprised to see him there, holding pamphlets from mental health facilities. His eyes were tired, rimmed with dark circles, his posture heavy with sadness and disappointment. "Please," he said quietly, extending the pamphlets towards me. "Just consider it, for us." I took the pamphlets, my fingers numb, but I didn't speak. I couldn't find the words. He stood there a moment longer, searching my face for something, anything, before turning to leave quietly, disappointment etched into his every step. Closing the door, I leaned against it, breathing heavily as panic surged through me. Emily had successfully isolated me, painted me as dangerous, and now my parents believed her. I was now an outsider, my sanity questioned, my character shattered. But then, amidst the darkness, I remembered something vital, something Emily had overlooked in her desperation to punish me. The truth. And unlike Emily's elaborate lies, I had proof. Solid, undeniable proof that could unravel her entire web of deceit. The morning after my father's visit, I woke up feeling hollow. Sleep had been scarce, disturbed by restless dreams filled with accusations and endless confrontations. Each nightmare had felt painfully real, my subconscious replaying every harsh word and doubtful glance from my family over and over again. My apartment felt oppressive, the walls closing in as echoes of yesterday's conversation replayed endlessly in my mind. Dragging myself from bed, I moved sluggishly through the motions, feeling weighed down by a sense of dread and exhaustion. I brewed coffee, hoping its bitter aroma might ground me slightly, pull me back into the present. As the coffee dripped slowly into the pot, I glanced at the pamphlets my father had left, scattered across the kitchen table like silent accusations, each one another blow to my already fragile sense of self. My heart ached with disbelief. How had things spiraled this far? I sat down heavily at the table, picking up my phone, hesitating. The idea of confronting Emily again filled me with dread, a cold, creeping sensation that curled around my spine. But I knew silence would only allow her lies to cement further, twisting the truth until it was unrecognizable. My fingers hovered uncertainly over the screen, anxiety gripping me tightly. Before I could act, the phone buzzed again, this time a message from my childhood friend, Sarah. "Hey," the text read simply. "Can we talk?" Anxiety knotted in my stomach, twisting painfully. Sarah and I hadn't spoken in months. Our friendship had gradually faded into silence, largely because Emily had always been closer to her. Sarah had become distant, pulled into Emily's orbit, leaving me feeling isolated and forgotten. I braced myself, responding cautiously, "Sure, call whenever." She called almost immediately. Her voice sounded tentative, uncertain. "I heard some things. From Emily." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. A sinking feeling settled deep within me, knowing what would come next. "And? She says you're having some kind of breakdown," Sarah said quietly, her voice heavy with concern. "She thinks you need help." "Honestly, I'm worried too." "Sarah," I managed, fighting to keep my voice steady, though inside I felt like I was drowning. "Emily is lying. She's upset because I refused to bail her out financially again. That's all." Sarah hesitated, clearly conflicted. "Look, I've known you forever," but she seemed genuinely scared. "What exactly happened between you two?" I sighed deeply, frustration mixing with exhaustion, feeling completely drained. "Nothing, Sarah. Nothing happened. She asked for money. I said no. She threatened me, and when I stood my ground, she created this elaborate story to punish me." There was a long pause, heavy with uncertainty and confusion. Finally, Sarah sighed softly. "I don't know what to think." Emily was crying, hysterical. She even showed me some texts. My pulse quickened, adrenaline surging through me. "Sarah, listen, whatever texts she showed you, they're manipulated or taken out of context. Emily is playing you, she's playing everyone. I have proof. Real proof." "Proof?" Sarah asked, her interest piqued, her voice hesitant but curious. "What proof?" "I'll show you. I'll show everyone," I said, determination surging within me, breaking through the anxiety and fear. "But I need your help. Will you hear me out first?" She paused again, then replied softly, "Of course. Meet me later." Let's talk. After hanging up, I felt a spark of hope ignite, fragile but tangible. Perhaps not everyone had completely abandoned me yet. Maybe there was still a chance to reclaim my truth. I spent the next few hours meticulously gathering evidence, texts, voicemails, email exchanges. Each piece was undeniable proof of Emily's deception. As I collected the messages, I relived each betrayal, each manipulation, feeling both anger and sadness rise within me like a relentless tide. Memories of past conflicts with Emily surfaced painfully, moments when I'd been blamed unjustly or forced to apologize just to keep the peace. The evening approached quickly and I made my way to a quiet cafe. The familiar streets felt alien, each step heavier than the last as I anticipated the confrontation ahead. The dim lights of the cafe offered some comfort against my frayed nerves, a gentle ambience contrasting starkly with my internal turmoil. Sarah was already there, sitting at a corner table, her expression cautious yet attentive. I slid into the seat across from her, my heart racing with anxiety. "Thanks for meeting me," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," she responded softly, studying me carefully. "I'm here to listen." Taking a deep breath, I slid my phone across the table toward her, my fingers trembling slightly. "Here," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything is here. Just look." Sarah picked up the phone, scrolling through the messages, her expression shifting gradually from skeptical to shocked, then finally to anger. Her brows knitted together tightly and she shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe this," she whispered, her voice tight with emotion. This changes everything. Will you help me?" I asked, desperation and hope mingling painfully inside me. "Emily's convinced everyone I'm dangerous. I need to get the truth out, Sarah." She nodded firmly, determination now shining clearly in her eyes. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she said sincerely, her voice steady and reassuring. "I'll help you clear your name." In that moment, a wave of relief washed over me, powerful enough to nearly bring tears to my eyes. For the first time in days, I felt less alone, less trapped. Together, Sarah and I began formulating a plan, discussing each step in careful detail, aware the road ahead would be difficult but resolved to face it head-on. Emily's carefully crafted lies were about to unravel, and this time, I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. I would reclaim my life, my truth, and finally put an end to Emily's manipulations once and for all. The cafe meeting with Sarah had ignited something within me, a newfound determination to reclaim my narrative. As we left, my phone vibrated once again. The screen lit up with Emily's name. My heart pounded erratically as I read the message. "Meet me tomorrow at Mom and Dad's. We need to talk." My throat tightened instantly, anxiety resurfacing like an unwelcome guest. But I knew avoiding this confrontation would only deepen the chaos Emily had unleashed. Taking a deep breath, I replied firmly, "I'll be there." That night, sleep evaded me entirely. I spent hours tossing and turning, rehearsing conversations in my mind, imagining all possible outcomes. Would my parents finally see through Emily's lies? Or had her manipulations been too effective, too deeply entrenched in their minds? The next morning felt surreal. Each step toward my parents' house weighed heavier than the last. The air was crisp and clear, contrasting starkly with the storm of anxiety raging inside me. Memories flooded back with painful clarity. Family dinners filled with laughter, joyful holidays, minor arguments, all now overshadowed by betrayal and mistrust. As I approached the familiar front door, I hesitated, my pulse quickening. The door that once symbolized warmth and safety now felt daunting. Trying desperately to steady my nerves, I took a deep breath and knocked. Emily opened the door almost immediately, a carefully composed expression masking whatever emotions lurked beneath. Her gaze was cold, assessing. "Glad you could make it," she said coolly, stepping aside without further greeting. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, almost suffocating. My parents sat stiffly on the sofa, their faces etched with apprehension, anxiety, and a touch of sadness. Emily took her place near them, subtly emphasizing their united front against me. I remained standing for a moment, feeling painfully isolated, before finally taking a seat opposite them all. "Let's clear this up," I began steadily, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. Carefully, I pulled out my phone. "I brought evidence, real evidence, that proves Emily has manipulated everything." Emily scoffed immediately, rolling her eyes dramatically and leaning back with exaggerated nonchalance. "Really? More lies? You can't just admit you have a problem. Ignoring her provocation, I turned to our parents, my voice firm yet pleading, desperate for them to understand. Please, just listen to this. As I played the recording of Emily's threats, the room grew uncomfortably silent. Each word echoed sharply through the room, leaving no room for misinterpretation. My mother's eyes widened in shock, her hand flying to her mouth as disbelief washed over her features. My father's face turned a shade paler, his expression unreadable yet clearly shaken. Emily's confidence visibly faltered, her eyes flickering with panic and uncertainty. This isn't what it seems, Emily stammered defensively, her voice pitched higher than usual, betraying her fear. She set me up. She manipulated everything. Emily? My mother interjected, her voice trembling with anger and disappointment. Stop. Just stop. My father, visibly shaken and conflicted, stood abruptly, pacing nervously around the room. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly overwhelmed. How could you do this, Emily? How could you lie to us like this? Emily tried desperately to protest, her voice rising with frustration and desperation. She's twisting things. I'm telling you, it wasn't like this at all. My mother cut her off sharply, her voice now firm and unwavering. Enough. You've lied enough. Turning to me, my mother's eyes filled with tears, her voice soft yet resolute, carrying an apology and regret. I'm so sorry we doubted you. The relief I felt in that moment was overwhelming, tears prickling behind my eyes. The heavy weight of false accusations finally lifted. Emily sank into silence, her shoulders slumping in defeat as the realization that she'd lost control became evident. In the days following our confrontation, the truth spread rapidly through our family and friends. Messages flooded in from relatives and acquaintances, apologies mixing with disbelief, sympathy intertwined with confusion. Each acknowledgement felt like a small victory, a step closer to reclaiming the life Emily had nearly stolen from me. Emily retreated into silence, ostracized and shunned by those she'd deceived. Her once strong influence crumbled rapidly, leaving her isolated and exposed. The victory felt bittersweet. I had never wanted to see her destroyed, only to end her lies. Yet justice had finally been served. For the first time in weeks, genuine hope blossomed within me. The truth had finally prevailed. My reputation was slowly being restored, my bonds with family and friends gradually healing from the deep wounds Emily had inflicted. It was time to rebuild, to rediscover the peace and stability I'd lost. As I looked forward, a renewed strength surged through me. I would reclaim my life, piece by piece, determined never to let anyone rewrite my story again. The weeks following Emily's exposure felt surreal, each day bringing a new revelation, a new layer peeled back from the web of deception she had spun. Gradually, I began rebuilding my life, piece by careful piece, each step forward feeling simultaneously liberating and painstakingly slow. One quiet afternoon, I sat alone in my apartment, sorting through countless messages of support and apology from friends and distant relatives alike. Each message was a balm to my bruised spirit, yet also a painful reminder of just how deeply Emily's deception had cut. My phone buzzed occasionally with well wishes and offers to meet for coffee, each notification slowly rebuilding my confidence and sense of connection. A gentle knock at the door broke my concentration, startling me slightly. I hadn't been expecting anyone. Curious yet cautious, I rose from my chair and approached the door, peering through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat when I recognized my mother standing there, hesitant, her expression filled with cautious hope and deep regret. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door slowly. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty and vulnerability. I stepped aside silently, inviting her in with a quiet nod. She entered slowly, glancing around the room as if seeing it clearly for the first time. She sat gingerly on my sofa, her hands clasped nervously in her lap, eyes avoiding mine for a moment before finally lifting her gaze to meet mine. "I don't know how to begin to apologize," she started, her voice trembling with emotion. "We failed you so badly. We should have seen through her lies. We allowed ourselves to believe things that contradicted everything we knew about you." My throat tightened immediately, a mixture of relief and lingering hurt swirling within me. "It wasn't entirely your fault," I admitted softly, the words difficult yet honest. "Emily was incredibly convincing. She knew exactly what to say to manipulate all of us. My mother shook her head firmly, tears brimming in her eyes, ready to spill over at any moment. No, we should have known better. You're our daughter. We know who you truly are, your kindness, your integrity, your compassion. To doubt that even for a moment is unforgivable. We talked for hours, unraveling the tangled threads of misunderstandings and manipulation that Emily had so skillfully woven. Each shared memory, each honest admission gradually chipped away at the wall that had formed between us. With each passing moment, the walls built by lies crumbled further, replaced by honesty, transparency, and mutual forgiveness. When she finally left, the heaviness in my chest had lessened considerably, replaced by a tentative optimism I hadn't felt in weeks. Days later, my father visited, his approach quieter but no less heartfelt. He stood at my door, looking smaller somehow, burdened by guilt and regret. He apologized profoundly, acknowledging the deep pain their doubt had caused me. His words were careful, genuine, each sentence clearly weighed heavily before being spoken. Slowly, steadily, the trust between us began to mend, strengthened by openness and renewed understanding. Emily remained distant, retreating further into isolation, her absence keenly felt at family gatherings and conversations. Occasionally, a family member would mention her briefly, describing awkward encounters marked by her continued refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Though saddened by her choices, I had finally learned to detach myself emotionally from her manipulative grip, realizing I could not control her actions or choices. Sarah became a steadfast presence in my life once more, our friendship deepening significantly in the aftermath of everything we had endured together. She stood by me through every challenging moment, offering unwavering support, encouragement, and sometimes simply her comforting presence. Together, we navigated the complexities of rebuilding trust with others in our social circle who had been misled by Emily's elaborate fabrications. Eventually, life regained a semblance of normalcy, though I was forever changed by the experience. I became more vigilant about setting boundaries, more aware of the importance of self-preservation and prioritizing my own emotional health. My family, too, became more cautious and introspective, keenly aware of the consequences of blind trust, unchecked favoritism, and lack of communication. As months passed, Emily's once commanding presence diminished entirely, leaving behind only echoes of a painful past, a fading memory tinged with lessons learned and growth achieved. The peace I'd worked so hard to reclaim now felt secure, firmly grounded in truth, resilience, and hard-won self-awareness. My life, once disrupted by betrayal, manipulation, and isolation, was now firmly back under my control, shaped by lessons learned and strength gained. In quiet moments of reflection, I realized I'd gained far more than I'd lost. The experience had sharpened my understanding of relationships, trust, self-worth, and resilience. I discovered depths of inner strength I hadn't known existed, forging new pathways forward with clarity and purpose. Though scars from the ordeal remained, they now served as reminders of battles bravely fought and victories courageously earned. Ultimately, I emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, better prepared to face whatever future challenges lay ahead. I knew, deep in my heart, I had survived the worst, reclaimed my narrative entirely on my own terms, and built a foundation solid enough to withstand whatever came next.